Hey, it's Doris with All of the Books, and I am here with another Reading Women's Challenge readathon video. This one is giving you ideas for one particular prompt, and that prompt is a fantasy novel written by a woman of color. This is a topic that I have been wanting to make a video about for several months now. I've just been so impressed by the diversity in middle grades and YA fantasy that has come out in this past year, and I wanted to share that. So this readathon is perfect for that, to motivate me to do that, to get that video done. And I will link all of the readathon and the Reading Women information below. Do check it out. June is going to be a fabulous month. This readathon goes over the entire month of June, and there's just so much reading enrichment to be had in this challenge and prompt and the Reading Women podcast itself. So let me just jump right in. The first one I want to talk to you about is Furthermore by Tahereh Mafi. Tahereh is an American author. Her parents are Iranian. She was born and raised here in the States, and this book is just a delight. The writing style is very much the whimsical middle grades style of fantasy. Whimsy and literary fiction are quite the thing in middle grades fantasy. You'll find the writing is much more complex than you might imagine if you're not used to reading middle grades work, but very much literary fiction, in my opinion, and very whimsical. This involves a little girl who, I believe her name is Alice. I'm so not good with names, but she is living in a world, and you can really see Tahereh's personal style in the world she's created. If you've ever checked out Tahereh herself online, she just has the most colorful visual personality. It's just gorgeous sense of style. You can see that in this book. But the world she's created is so colorful and vivid, and the people themselves, she writes them with all of these gorgeous skin tones. And then you have little Alice, who is white, very white and colorless, and is seen as ugly because of that. And just the profound thoughts that you can generate, the discussions that you can generate with young people based on this concept are tremendous. As a teacher, I just really was interested in that aspect. It also deals with a little girl whose father is absent. He's been basically missing for a couple years. There is a kind of coming of age trial that kids go through to get work assignments, and I'm not going to spoil that, but you see how that turns out. And then not only is she living in this whimsical world, but she travels to another even more whimsical world with a friend that she makes who originally wasn't a friend. So really fun, delightful read, and a lot to think about. And then we have Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. Julie is another American author of Vietnamese parents, and yes, I'm just reading my notes back here. This is a fairy tale retelling, so this fits another prompt. This is, I believe it's going to be a duology. This first one, or maybe even a trilogy, but this first one is looking at the evil queen from the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale. I was just fascinated. I mean, with a fairy tale retelling, you kind of know where it's going, but the way she gets you there is just, I was fascinated, very fascinated. It's a beautiful world that she tells us about. obviously of Asian mythology. And the thing that I was most impressed with her skills as a writer, I don't particularly care for fantasy that has too many types of characters that I'm not used to. I like the classic elves and dwarves and goblins because I don't have to listen to new creatures being described. Sometimes those descriptive passages become tedious for me. Julie C. Dow has this amazing ability to describe characters on the fly as you're entering into a fight scene with them, or, you know, just major turning point in the story, and here she is just throwing in these character descriptions in the midst of all the chaos, and it's just fascinating. She did a great job with that. So I was very much, even though I feel like I know the story, I'm very much caught up, even so, on where it's going. Looking forward to the next book and to see the character development in here, you know, with having a dark protagonist that you really care about, but knowing that the brighter and more positive protagonist is coming along in the next book. I don't know, it's just fascinating to me. So enjoyed that one. And then we have, this was YA, by the way. Then we have another middle grades with Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. Nnedi Okorafor is a Nigerian-American author, and her books are set in a Nigerian, this one's actually set in modern-day Nigeria. This one centers around a group of 4 kids, somewhat misfits, for various reasons. Our protagonist is actually albino, and her and another boy they're from the States. They were raised in the States but have come back to Nigeria and don't really fit in. And then there's a magical, not a school per se, but a teaching environment, definitely. So each student is sent off to a different teacher that has chosen to take them on and teach them the magical system. And another one I really enjoyed. You're immersed in the environment of Nigeria, and very interesting perspective on discipline too, that you don't, you know, we're very careful about discipline in modern times, and we should be, but I just was fascinated by the different perspectives in this book. And then another one from a Nigerian American author, Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This one is YA, and actually I wanted to mention with this one, if you are looking for adult fiction, Nnedi Okorafor has written a novella trilogy they're more science fiction-esque, but a college-age student in another world, kind of a planetary kind of thing. That's where the science fiction-y part comes in. But I hear great things about that, and being novellas, it would be a great readathon book, I think. But Children of Blood and Bone has been, wow, so everywhere, so very everywhere. So I don't know how you could miss it, but basically this is a magic world. This is very politically minded, which is not something that I always enjoy. Actually, there are some politics in this one as well, but this is very politically minded, with a kingdom where the king has attempted to kill off everyone that is able to do magic, and of course there's always a few lingering people to keep that world going and trying to regenerate magic in their world. And this one is very tense, it's very plot driven, it go. You have, again, 4 teenagers, but this one isn't really a teaching environment. These kids have to learn on their own on the fly. And yeah, it's just very tense from beginning to end. And the ending was just, I think I'm going to have to read it again because I'm not quite sure what happened, but I'm very much interested to see where it goes. The writing style, the dialogue felt a little bit stilted to me, but I think it's something where she's written such an engrossing story that I got through that part, and I think that she can mature as a writer. So I'm looking forward to seeing where she goes with this, because it was just so exciting. And then I have a cheat. I didn't realize this was a cheat until I started doing my research. And now I am kind of blown away by this author, S.A. Chakraborty, The City of Brass. I'm amazed by her and her thoughts. This is a book set in early 18th century Egypt, initially, the Middle East, and then it goes to the fantasy world as well. This is, you know, the Arabian Nights, the genies in a bottle, and all of that jazz. She takes that and just makes you realize how stereotypical it is and comical, and she turns it into this just so intelligently written and interesting and just complex, so complex. So there are genies in here, they're called Jinn, and you just have this complete system, magical system based on this idea and these different tribes of peoples, and complex but fascinating, and also very political. Definitely this one is another SFF political YA. This one is the best written of all of these, I have to say. This one I just thought was brilliant. It's kind of violent, as is Children of Blood and Bone, but the characters are just so many levels, depth to them, and you watch them transform just in this one book. And knowing it's going to be a trilogy, you know, there's just so much time to watch the transformation happen of these characters, and so many of them you see the good and the bad. With the Genn, you know, he basically when he's performing these wishes, he's not himself. He goes into like a coma, trance-like state where he's someone else. And so he's this person who's done horrific things, but not as himself, but it is him. It's so complicated to, you know, love someone and know what they've done. Yeah, this is, I just think this is brilliant, brilliantly written. Highly suggest that you read this. But it is a cheat for the topic because the author is not a woman of color. She was a blue-eyed Catholic from New Jersey who converted to Islam in her youth and spent some time living and studying in Egypt. She is now married to a fellow Muslim. I believe he is of Bengali descent, and they're raising a child. She's raising her daughter as a woman of color. So it's just fascinating. And just add to her complexity, she did not consider herself a fiction writer at all initially. She was a historian. So she is very much into historical fiction, and this is actually a historical fiction novel, a historical fantasy fiction. So if you were looking for, I forget which prompt it is, it's on the list, but there's one toward the end of the challenge that is a genre that you haven't read before. This one may indeed fit. It's a subgenre, a very specific subgenre of historical fantasy fiction. This would be perfect for that if you've never read historical fantasy fiction. Highly suggest this book. I absolutely love it. I got to the last page and could not believe it was over and I had to wait for more of the story. It is so great. And I wrote a couple quotes from the author on the back here that I wanted to read for you because I just thought they were so spot on. She actually teaches the teens in her mosque and feels a real heart for these teenagers and the messages that they receive from society. So she says, our young people should have representation, people they can look up to as heroes. So she says she wrote this book for herself and for her people. And she said, this is also what she says about being white and writing about other people that are not of her own birth heritage. She says, I try to hold myself accountable to fellow Muslims first and to showing respect and justice to a culture and history that I never forget isn't mine, despite how much I might enjoy it. I think this woman has a real heart for young people, and I appreciate her. So this might not exactly fit the topic, but I think that you could work it into many other topics in the challenge, and I think it is so dynamic. Okay, so in case you were wanting another adult option, I'm going to read an adult option for this particular prompt, The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is written by an African-American woman from Brooklyn, and I thought this was very interesting. She herself is an SFF reviewer for the New York Times. So these books have just all over the universe lauded books. So I'm really curious to see. I think they must be fabulous. But I think part of that comes from her knowing what to look for in science fiction and fantasy herself. Yeah, and this one I think I will especially enjoy because it seems like it's about climate change, and I'm very much, that thought is in my mind, especially with the current environment where we're backtracking on some of the progress we made in that arena. So, yes. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have found some great books that pique your interest, and June 1st is like less than 2 days away. Day after tomorrow. Join in. It's going to be fabulous. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.